rebrand was a massive success. Visa became a global brand almost overnight. Most people use credit cards every day. They swipe, they tap, they buy. But almost nobody knows the name of the man who created the system that makes it all work. He wasn't a banker. He wasn't rich. He was a middle manager at a struggling bank who had a radical idea that bankers thought was insane. Today, Visa processes over 14 trillion in transactions annually. It's accepted in over 200 countries. It's one of the most successful payment networks ever created. This is Dee Hock, the credit card king, who built the Visa empire and then walked away from it all. The dropout, who refused to quit. Dee Hock was born on March 21, 1929, in North Ogden, Utah. He died on July 16, 2022, at age 93. But the system he created processes billions of transactions every single day. Dee didn't come from privilege. His father worked on the railroad. His mother raised 5 children. They were poor, living paycheck to paycheck. Dee was smart but restless. He hated school. He hated being told what to do. He questioned everything. He dropped out of college twice. He had no degree, no connections, no clear path. Dee later said, "I was a failure by every conventional measure." But I refused to accept that failure was permanent. In his 20s, Dee worked a series of dead-end jobs, grocery stores, finance companies, odd positions. He was broke, frustrated, and searching for meaning. Then in 1965, at age 36, Dee got a job at National Bank of Commerce in Seattle. It was a low-level management position, nothing special, but it was about to change everything. But there was no system, no network, no coordination. If you had a Bank Americard from a California bank, you could only use it at merchants who had agreements with that specific bank. Transactions were processed by hand. Merchants waited weeks to get paid. Fraud was rampant. Losses were massive. The credit card business was losing millions. Most banks wanted to quit. Dee's bank was part of the Bank Americard licensing program, and they were drowning in chaos. In 1968, Bank of America, which owned Bank Americard, called a meeting of all the banks in the program. They needed to fix the disaster or shut it down. Dee attended as a junior representative. He was the lowest ranking person in the room, but Dee had been thinking about the problem, and he had an idea. The revolutionary idea nobody understood. During the meeting, senior bankers argued about who should control the credit card system. Everyone wanted power. Everyone wanted control. Nobody could agree. Then Dee stood up and said something that shocked the room. He said, "Nobody should control it. The system should control itself." The bankers stared at him. What did that even mean? Dee explained, "Create a new organization owned by all the member banks equally. No single bank controls it. Decisions are made democratically. The organization exists only to serve its members." It was a radical idea. A business owned by its competitors run for their mutual benefit. A banker in the room said, "That's impossible. Competitors can't cooperate. Someone has to be in charge." But Dee insisted, competition and cooperation aren't opposites. They're two sides of the same coin. We compete for customers but cooperate on infrastructure. Nobody really understood what Dee was proposing, but they were desperate. Bank of America agreed to give Dee a chance. They put him in charge of creating this new organization. Dee was 39 years old. He had no experience running anything major, but he had a vision: building the impossible organization. In 1970, Dee founded National Bank Americard, Inc. NB, the organization that would become Visa. Dee's model was unlike anything in business. He called it a chaotic organization, a blend of chaos and order. The idea: create a structure flexible enough to adapt but stable enough to function. Let members compete freely while cooperating on shared infrastructure. Banks thought he was insane. A former NBI executive recalled, Dee spoke in riddles. He talked about philosophy, biology, nature. Most bankers just wanted a simple org chart. Dee was building something nobody had ever seen. But Dee made it work. He convinced thousands of banks to join. He created bylaws, governance structures, and rules. He built a network where any bank could issue cards and any merchant could accept them. By 1973, Bank AmeriCard was operating nationally. By 1974, it was expanding internationally. But Dee faced a problem. The name Bank AmeriCard didn't work globally. Foreign banks didn't want an American brand. In 1976, Dee rebranded the entire system. He needed a name that worked in every language, on every continent. He chose Visa, short, simple, universal. It sounded like Visa for travel. Dee later explained, Visa is a word that means access, permission, everywhere. That's exactly what we wanted to represent. The network that runs the world under Dee's leadership, Visa, exploded. By the late 1970s, Visa cards were accepted at millions of merchants worldwide. Transactions processed smoothly across borders and currencies. Dee built the technology infrastructure that made it all work: authorization systems, settlement networks, fraud detection. A payment industry expert said Dee didn't just create a brand, he created the plumbing of global commerce. Visa is infrastructure. Dee's genius was understanding that Visa shouldn't compete with banks. Visa should enable banks to compete with each other. Banks issued the cards. Banks handled customer relationships. Visa just connected everything. By 1984, Visa was processing over 100 billion in transactions annually. Dee had turned chaos into the most successful payment network in history. But then, at the height of his success, Dee did something shocking. The leader who walked away. In 1984, at age 55, Dee Hock resigned as CEO of Visa. He didn't get fired. He didn't retire quietly. He just walked away. Dee later said, I realized I had become what I hated, a manager obsessed with control. I needed to leave before I destroyed what I built. Dee moved to a small farm in California. He lived simply, reading, writing, and thinking. He refused most interview requests. A journalist who tried to interview him said Dee didn't want fame. He didn't want credit. He just wanted to live quietly and think. Dee spent the rest of his life writing about leadership, organizations, and philosophy. He published a book called One for Many, Vicia, and the Rise of Tortic Organization. It was dense, philosophical, and largely ignored. Dee wrote, the problem is not how to get power. The problem is how to prevent power from being abused. He believed most organizations failed because they concentrated power in the hands of a few. Visa succeeded because power was distributed, the empire he left behind. While Dee lived quietly on his farm, Visa grew into a global giant. In 2008, Visa went public in the largest IPO in U.S. history at the time, raising $17.9 billion. Today, Visa is worth over $500 billion. It processes over 14 trillion in transactions annually. It operates in over 200 countries and territories. Nearly 4 billion Visa cards are in circulation worldwide. A payment analyst said Visa is one of the most profitable companies on earth. It earns money on every transaction but takes almost no risk. It's a perfect business model. But Dee never owned significant equity in Visa. The organization he created was owned by member banks, not by him. When Visa went public, Dee didn't get rich. He received no windfall. He had long since walked away. The chaotic philosophy. Dee spent his later years promoting chaotic, thinking the idea that the best organizations balance chaos and order. He believed nature operated this way. Forests, ecosystems, weather systems all balance chaos and order. Dee argued that businesses should do the same, give people freedom while providing structure. He criticized traditional corporate hierarchies as rigid, slow, and destined to fail. He once said command and control is dying. The future belongs to organizations that self-organize, adapt, and evolve. These ideas influenced thinkers in business, technology, and social movements. But mainstream business largely ignored him. His ideas were too radical, too abstract. The man who wanted no credit. Dee Hock died on July 16, 2022 at age 93. His death received little media coverage. Most people had no idea who he was. There were no statues, no buildings named after him, no grand tributes. Dee would have wanted it that way. He once said, "I don't want to be remembered. I want the organization to be remembered. I'm irrelevant." But the truth is, Visa exists because of Dee. The legacy, bigger than the man. Dee Hock proved that cooperation between competitors is possible, that distributed power beats concentrated power, that the best leaders build systems that don't need them. He built Visa not to get rich, but to solve a problem. And when the problem was solved, he walked away. From a college dropout to the architect of global payments. From a junior manager to the creator of a 500 billion empire. From chaos to order and back to simplicity. That's the story of Dee Hock, the man who built the credit card empire and asked for nothing in return. If you enjoyed learning about Dee Hock, the unknown genius who created Visa and revolutionized global payments, let us know who we should uncover next. The most important innovations often come from the people history forgets, and we're bringing their stories to light.